Well, thanks again, everyone, for attending today, and really appreciate the participation and the questions. Um, I'm going to go through some updates on other projects we haven't been able to cover, and some things that are still in progress. Specifically, the Leatherwood and Alder Creek restorations at the McCosker property. I'll be talking about that. And next year, once we finish the full construction, we'll give you a bigger overview of everything that's happened. But this is just kind of a preview of and some recent updates on that project. But before I want to start again, I just want to again acknowledge it's been a challenging year. And we heard about the fires today, but the smoke impacts create a lot of challenges. And then obviously the COVID challenges and the distancing and the remote working we've had to do in many situations have just been challenging. And so I'm just happy that we could all get together today and do this despite those challenges. And I know I said at the beginning, but I just can't thank our park operations staff enough for their efforts to keep the parks well maintained and open during this time. They've just done a great job, and without them, we would not be able to do all the great work we're doing, and these lands would not be protected as nearly as well as they are with their efforts out there to manage the public and to protect our resources. So thank you, park operations, and also just a big thank you to our fire personnel who helped coordinate the response to the fires and after they happened, and now we're still continuing to coordinate and work on coordinating our monitoring and making sure that any of the suppression repairs don't create any damage to our habitat. So thanks to our fire department, and thanks for helping us with coordination with CAL FIRE on all these things. Before I talk about some of the projects, I want to just give some updates on some staffing changes that have happened and since our last stewardship seminar. So last year, before the pandemic, we were able to hire Kimberly Crispin into our IPM department, and Kimberly was hired after Pamela Bites. Many of you know Pamela. She's been in our IPM department for several years. And she was an ecologist in our IPM department. And after a very competitive recruitment for the IPM specialist position, Pamela was chosen as our IPM specialist. So when Pamela was promoted to IPM specialist, it created a vacancy in our IPM group. And there was also a vegetation ecologist position added in our IPM group. So Kimberly has been hired as that vegetation ecologist. And then we also have an IPM group. Heather DeQuincy is currently acting in that ecologist position that Pamela vacated when she was promoted. And so Heather's comes to us from the East Bay Regional Park District Police Department currently, but she has an educational background in botany and vegetation management, and worked before. She worked as an administrator with the Park District as working on IPM and vegetation management issues. So she's also been a great addition in a temporary role to our IPM team. And then also at the very beginning, as the pandemic was starting, we were also able to hire Peter Hopkinson, who you all heard from this morning. And so Peter's been a recent addition to our team. And as you heard this morning through his talk, and then also the students that he's worked with in the past, Peter brings really a wealth of knowledge and information to our group, and we're really excited to have him. We've also added another water management technician, and that was also created by a promotion within our group. So it's Sunshine Townsend, who many of you have interacted with during the seminar and leading up to it, and various projects over the years. Sunshine was promoted to Admin Analyst 2 in stewardship, and that created a vacancy in the water management technician, and we hired Sabrina Sexton for the water management technician position. Sabrina did work for the Park District as an interpretive student aide many years ago. Then she finished her degree and worked in consulting, doing a lot of stormwater monitoring and other water quality monitoring. So she brings a lot of good field monitoring experience for water quality to our group, and it's been a great addition to help us manage some of our harmful algal bloom and nutrient issues, but she's also actively working on beach monitoring and water quality. And then Koka Yamamoto was our most recent addition, and she's our senior administrative specialist. So she was hired after Heather David, our former senior administrative specialist, transferred to Big Break to be closer to her house. And Koka's just hit the ground running, and it's just been a great help. And the seminar would not have happened without the leadership of Koka and Sunshine. They've just done a great job coordinating this whole thing and putting together and getting us ready to do this in a virtual environment. So really thankful to both of them for their efforts, and welcome to the Stewardship Koka. Okay, now, so here's the update on restoration. So going to go through several projects that were in construction this year, and then talk about some projects that are just starting the planning phase. So right now we're in year 1 of construction of the restoration of Alder and Leatherwood creeks in the Sibley Volcanic Regional Preserve, and it's also borders of Huckleberry Botanic Preserve also. And this is a very important project for the Park District. It's our largest creek restoration we've ever done, and it's the largest creek daylighting project that I'm aware of in the San Francisco Bay Area. As you can see on this figure, there's that blue line. In that area where the blue line is, that channel does not exist right now. And there's also a few other, that's the main stem of the creek. There's also a few other tributary segments that aren't shown on this figure, but are also being created. And this project will create habitat for rainbow trout. If you look at this map at the bottom where that blue line hits Pinehurst Road, there's a culvert that goes under Pinehurst Road and goes, before the restoration started, there was a large pool there and basically a hole that had about a 10 to 15 foot elevational difference between the culvert and that pool. And so rainbow trout would make it under the road culvert and then get stuck in that pool. And so we saw that for a number of years and realized how important reestablishing this connection could be to this sub watershed of Upper San Leandro Creek. There is good spawning habitat upstream of this restored area. So we think by creating this connection, we will improve the habitat significantly for the rainbow trout in this area. And then by opening this up, there will also be creating more habitat for California red-legged frog, California newt, and we're also creating about 4 acres of riparian habitat and improved grassland areas around the riparian areas. So that will also improve habitat for Alameda whipsnake in this area. So very excited about this project. And I'll orient those who aren't familiar with the area with the next few slides, and then I'll show some photos of how the restoration is progressing. So here's the area map. It's just several miles south of Highway 24, and it's also south of the Wilder development that many of you are familiar with. And then here's a little bit more specific map about where it's located within the parks. As I said, it's just at the edge of Sibley, or within Sibley, and just right on the edge of Huckleberry Botanic Preserve. And then this photo shows what some of the areas looked like before the restoration started. This flat terraced area was part of the previous landowners' use. And so when they operated this, they operated as it was an active ranch area. They also did some agricultural activities in the area, some plant cultivation, and then they also had a paving and quarry operation on site, and they were developers. So they had a lot of storage of materials. There are various concrete bin areas that they stored materials at various structures, extra roads, numerous culverts. Over, I think about 2,800 linear feet of culverted stream is being reopened in this restoration and reestablished. And but the filling and all this work and this development of the property started happening in 1958. And over that time period, there's just a lot of active use. You can't see it on this photo, but this gravel area, the gravel road you see to the left, just to the left of there was a barn and that took off onto some other extra roads. And so they just had a very active use of this property that had a lot of impacts to the habitat. But this parcel was donated to the Park District in 2010, and we started looking at these opportunities, and luckily we've been able to move this forward at a really quick pace, just considering the scale of the project. It's happened fairly quickly for how large this restoration is. So this is what a lot of the property looked like before we started the restoration. There were a lot of failed culverts. There were sinkholes. This is a very small subset of the number of sinkholes. There are sinkholes in many locations, and they were created by culverts that were put in incorrectly, and or culverts that had failed. And many times these culverts were areas where a tributary had been culverted that we may not even expect to see, and then it would start failing, and we'd realize that there, it had been filled so much we couldn't tell there had been a previous channel there. So it's been a very interesting work in progress as we start removing a lot of that material. And these photos show some of what the filled areas look like before. On the left, where that part of that tree has fallen, you see this structure, the concrete structure and the sign there. That is a clean out area and an area to access and get down into one of these culverts. It's about a 10 to 12 foot drop down to the culvert. And this whole area adjacent to the road was a former tributary channel to the restoration. And so that will be opened up with this restoration, and a creek channel will be reestablished along this adjacent to the road. And then on the bottom photo, to the right of that gravel road, that is really the bottom of the valley. And this is where the stream channel used to be. The main stem of this creek used to be in the area that's completely covered now is where it was completely filled and culverted. So some of the photos coming up will show you where the channel is reestablished in that area. Here's just some more of the subsidence and damage that we are seeing of various previously constructed structures, and one of the concrete structures that was there that had to be removed. And then here's just a little better view of the overall project area and a local map that kind of shows where the restoration's happening right now. That's what's being built this year. This green area is where the construction's happening right now. And then this shows a little bit of the long-term plan. So the dark green areas here of Alder Creek, or the darker green, that's being constructed right now, and the next photos will show some of that progress. Then the lighter green sections of the upper part of Alder Creek and then the part of Leatherwood Creek are planned for construction next year. So that will go forward as soon as the construction window opens next year in our permits. Approximately late April, early May, some of these activities will restart after the rainy season's over. And then here's some of the construction precautions being taken to prevent the spread of Phytophthora and other pathogens coming into the site. We've got a lot of these BMPs in place throughout the site, but here's just the entrance, and that's our dedicated board member, Beverly Lane, who's just been a tireless supporter of this project for many years, and has really been a big help in helping us get it fully funded. And so Beverly came out for a tour, and there she is cleaning her boots on the way into the site. But all the personnel coming into the site cleans their boots on their way in and their way out. And here we have some of the construction progress just starting. And so this is several months ago, so don't worry. We've put a lot of erosion control and other things in place by now, but this is just showing us opening up the channel and reestablishing it. This is a picture of an area where we will have a road crossing that will get to an area for parking and some of the other facilities. We can have replaced the old large culvert system with an arch culvert here with an open bottom. So it functions as a clear span bridge would, and it spans the channel. Here's showing that entrance area where we removed that hole and reestablished a direct grade to the culvert that goes under Pinehurst Road. This project is also going to modify that culvert under Pinehurst Road, and we're adding baffles into that culvert, so it'll be better passable by rainbow trout to get from San Leandro Creek into this part of the property. So it's an improvement, so the fish will have better access to this restored channel. Here's just another view of some of the log structures going in. You can see some of the rock weirs in that channel, but also some of the log structures that are being put in to create habitat and to also stabilize the banks. And then here's the start a few weeks ago when we started putting in some of our erosion control materials, and hydro seeding has been going into place, and now we're getting ready to start, and we are starting planting a lot more of the container plants in the near future to restore the riparian habitat. So just want to really thank our design and construction team. They're really taking the lead now, but this project wouldn't nearly be move along as fast as it has and be doing as much as it did if it wasn't for the leadership of our former senior planner, Julie Bondurant. Julie retired from the Park District over the last year, but Julie was just a great asset to the project team and to a tireless advocate for this project for many years, and really helped us lead us to where we are today. But now Ren Bates and Carmen Erasmus in our design and construction department are really taking the lead in getting this construction completed this year, and they've just been doing a great job managing the site. We've had numerous delays this year due to COVID, due to the fires, due to the high wind and red flag days. And they've been able to manage it all and stay in close communication with the regulatory agencies and really keep the project on schedule for the most part. We did get a bit lucky that the rains came later, and we've had to get some extensions into the work windows of the permits, but it's just been a really good process and cooperative relationship with the agencies and good communication there as we've managed the construction to keep it going and make sure there are no impacts while we're doing it. So it's been a good season despite all the challenges. So here's another project we did this year in Huckleberry. We did a creek restoration. This is another part of Upper San Leandro Creek. This is just down Pinehurst Road to the west of the McCosker property. So if you keep going on Pinehurst Road past the McCosker property, and there's a hairpin turn, which has about 4 parking spots to get into Huckleberry and to hike in there. And so this, if you go up that, from that little turnout up the roadways, this is where there was a culvert, as you see on the left. It was undersized and would get clogged periodically and create issues in the channel. And it was also impassable by rainbow trout because of how it was oriented. So we did this restoration to open up that culvert, to replace it with an arch culvert with an open bottom. And as you see on the right, there's about 400 linear feet of riparian vegetation that's going to be enhanced and improved as part of this project. So we've laid the bank back there, expanded the ability to add some additional vegetation in there. And in the bottom right photo, you can see some of those plants that were put in about a month ago. So another project, and I will talk a little bit more about some of our routine maintenance in our departments in this, but this project was done to compensate for some of the impacts of our routine maintenance projects. Another project that's going to finish construction this year is the Ensignal Beach restoration. We've enhanced the dunes at Ensignal Beach, but the photo here is showing the shoreline and the area. On the top photos, there's a fence. There used to be a degraded shipping container that was put into the bank to stabilize the bank. And that shipping container had eroded over the years and was just a rusty metal mess. And it was the reason the fence is there is because that shoreline was unstable, and it was also unsafe for the public to access that area. So we've restored that area and then put in some more light class rock in this area that will provide better habitat for benthic organisms than some more large class riprap. And then as it goes around the bend here, I don't have a good photo, but it transitions more into the beach, and the dunes you can see on the top photo are being restored, and all the ice plants being removed. And we're going to restore this small little dune system, have a nice little project to improve access and improve the small pocket of habitat there at Ensignal Beach. So another project that's just starting the planning phase. For those of you who've been watching our programs for a number of years, we've been talking about the Hayward Marsh restoration, and we've also had talks in the past about some of the species that inhabit the Hayward Marsh area. But we're starting on a planning process under the leadership of our design and construction team. Chris Barton and Scott Stoller are working to develop a restoration plan. We've hired a consultant team, and many representatives from the Stewardship Department are part of that team, and we're starting to evaluate options to restore this marsh. We're going to be working it on over the next 2 years, this restoration plan. As you see the top photo here with the basins that are existing, basins 1, 2A, and 2B are currently part of the treatment works, because the current Hayward Marsh functions as a treatment marsh. Wastewater comes in from the Union Sanitary District into the ponds, and that wastewater discharge will be stopped when we start to restore these. And so areas 1, 2A, and 2B will be restored to a muted tidal or to a tidal function. That's what we're kind of looking at to determine what's best. And then depending on the design constraints, the site needs, as we assess the overall site and what will be most beneficial, we may also build some seasonal wetlands within this complex too. So we're just really trying to right now evaluate the balance of those habitat types in the new in the restored marsh, and how we can also connect this area to Cogswell Marsh, the north, the Salt Marsh Harvest Mouse Preserve, and the Hard Marsh. And then the area 3A on this photo, that's where the least tern island is. And so we have least terns, western snowy plovers, and black skimmers that nest on that island. And we've talked about that at many past seminars, but it's been a highly successful breeding area for least terns and snowy plovers in Pond 3A. And so that's going to be a primary driver of this restoration is protecting that island habitat, looking for opportunities to expand and add additional islands in this area, And then how do we protect and maintain all this infrastructure to address sea level rise? So we're really trying to look at that in our designs and how we design this restoration. And then we're also working on a feasibility study for Jewel Lake, also being led by Chris Barton and Scott Stoller's group, and also just a team of stewardship staff, also a big part of that. Numerous from all of our various disciplines in stewardship are part of that team. And we're starting to look at what are the options to restore this area. There's some very big challenges here because this reservoir was placed here in an area that has high rates of sedimentation, but it also provides important habitat. And so we're looking at ways to manage and maintain this area to create a more sustainable management regime so it doesn't need to be dredged every 20 years, but also trying to protect and support the various habitats in this area. So those are some of our large-scale restoration projects that are happening and moving and starting in the planning phase and in the implementation phase. And now I'm going to talk about some just quick updates from our departments. These are just kind of high-level updates. And really talking about some of the way our priorities have changed and the things we're working on after this year's fires, and what we're prioritizing. Some of our highlights. These are really just highlights, though. It's not a comprehensive presentation on what's happening in any one department. I'm just trying to hit a few of the high points. So if I leave something out that's also happening, I apologize. But I really can't cover everything we're doing in such a short time. So the Stewardship Administration, that's really the group that I oversee that directly reports to me. So that's more I'm talking here about more of the staff, and so that report to me. And so our group really coordinates some of the larger restoration projects, but then we also, Kristen Van Dam is in the Stewardship Administration group, and she's really our fuels management implementation person and does a lot of the evaluation of the impacts of fuels management. And Kristen's also working to do work on some other restoration to benefit habitat within the fuels management area that I'll talk about. But our group's also doing a lot of coordination of the research permits, that's Sunshine and COCA, and then putting on the stewardship seminar today. In the past, we've done a lot of work with schools and other nonprofit organizations, but some of that's been really challenged this year due to COVID restrictions. So we're hoping to get back working with Urban Tilth in the very near future. They've just been a great partner to do some small scale restoration projects. But stewardship's role in fuel management is really administering the permits and coordinating with the fire department. And we've been very active in doing that this year and working to maintain the regulatory compliance with the agencies. We are working with the fire department to assess this area of eucalyptus adjacent to Jewel Lake in this photo. And we're looking to move forward some thinning work in those areas to reduce the eucalyptus there and start enhancing some of that habitat in those areas. We've also got a project on the books to do vegetation management at Point Pinole. Point Pinole is an area where we've had a long-term data set for overwintering monarchs. And so we've been working with our operations staff and with our fire department. And then we also hired Stu Weiss to help us design a restoration that would benefit monarch butterflies. And so we've gotten a grant for the Wildlife Conservation Board, and very soon we had some challenges with work windows and restrictions this year, and we're not able to get the eucalyptus area thinned this year, but we will next year be doing some thinning very specifically at Point Pinole in ways to create more openings within the canopy to improve habitat for monarch butterflies. So our wildlife department's been very busy this year. Their work really changed after the fires. Just wanted to acknowledge the work of Doug Bell and Tammy Lim in that fire response. Doug's been really coordinating with CAL FIRE and the suppression repairs and making sure we don't have any impacts from those suppression repair activities as they go back to clean up dozer lines and things like that. And Doug's just been a great help coordinating with operations and the CAL FIRE on these efforts. And Tammy's really stepping up and taking a lot of efforts to monitor the impacts. So Tammy's been doing a lot of pond monitoring to look at impacts from the fires. And there's also going to be doing some working with some consultants to do some remote camera monitoring and also some acoustic monitoring of bats to see how species usage and changes as areas start to recover from the fires. We've also had a lot of increased impacts from some of the usage and just things changing with coyotes. So they've had to respond to some coyote incidents this year, and just really appreciate all the efforts of the wildlife group and And yesterday we heard from Dave Rinchie and a lot of his research he's done on red-legged frogs in our wildlife group. And Dave continues to work on a lot of his endangered species projects and a lot of his monitoring projects in wildlife. So, but he's also focused on some restoration at MLK and also managing the least term colony at Hayward shoreline. So actively monitoring and managing that colony next year and then working to make sure when we do the restoration that we do it in a way that expands and protects this area for the future. Our Wildland Vegetation group has been actively managing our livestock grazing programs this year, but as you heard earlier, they've been working with Heath to do more rare plant and vegetation monitoring and management, and then also working on their resource improvement projects. But their work has also been impacted by fire impacts and recovery efforts. And Dina has taken a lead, as Krista mentioned, to really coordinate the work within the Stewardship Department, and then is also assisting with the overall district-wide task force looking at the fire impacts and fire recovery. And Dina will be putting together a more detailed presentation on the fire impacts and recovery for our Natural Cultural Resources Committee meeting in December. So thanks, Dina, for all your efforts there. And Allison's been working very hard to get more projects going on the resource improvement projects. And so some of those were also a little delayed this year, but we've got many on the books for next year with partnership with NRCS for some pond enhancements and some water system repairs. And Allison's been very focused on improving water systems and creating water sources so we can better distribute the cattle on the land and get some of the beneficial effects as we see here in the bottom in the photo. And then just some of the rare plants we see in our grazing land. Just want to show some of the beautiful plant species that our grazing helps support, and we plan to continue some of those rare plant monitoring efforts next year. And then this is just another slide showing some of those resource improvement, talking about some of the resource improvement projects we're starting to work on, and just really appreciate Dina's focus on this and Allison's interest and just great work trying to keep these projects moving forward. Our fisheries program has really had to change things this year. It's been a challenge with, for several months, our weekly fish plants had to be stopped. And fishing was stopped in the Park District for a while, and it was one of the first safe activities once we were able to open things back up with the COVID restrictions. We brought fishing back to some of our parks. It was one of the safer activities that people could do, but we weren't able to do it necessarily in all of our parks right away, and the fires kept some of our parks closed for longer. So it's been a real challenge in getting the fish plants happening again, and the COVID restrictions have made it hard for the fisheries to do their typical lake surveys and typical stream surveys, because all those surveys you have to be working in very close proximity to others. So they've shifted priorities and have been working more on water quality issues related to some of our systems we put into 2 of our reservoirs to provide oxygenation and better improve water quality and reduce harmful algal blooms. So Ed in the fisheries group's really taken a lead in doing some of the water quality monitoring at Lake Anza, and also assisting at Lake Temescal for our water quality monitoring. But and they've also been focused more on pond assessments and looking at the ponds, and are really shifting priorities to look at help Tammy and help others in the department look at impacts of the fire to our pond systems. So thanks to you both for really shifting and moving things forward despite challenges to our fisheries program. Our ecological services group has been very active on routine maintenance projects. So thanks to Josh and Sunshine for really keeping that routine maintenance project going and on track this year, despite some of the challenges. This is just a photo of a past project showing. And then Becky, as you just heard about, has been working on the ecological health assessment, and we're happy to have that going. And we've been working on some best management practices for protecting natural resources in the agency. So we'll keep working on that over the next year. And Steve's also been working on the mountain lion study in partnership with Panthera, and I've got a few slides about that in a minute. But the routine maintenance has been going on pretty actively for over the last few years after we've had all of our agency permits in place. This shows one of those projects, and earlier I did show the Huckleberry project that compensates for some of the impacts when we do these projects. The one on the left is some of a culvert being repaired. Here's where we replaced a culvert. We were able to shorten that culvert and reduce some of the permanent impacts that were previously there. and then put in a culvert that was better suited and a little bit better protected, that should have a little bit longer longevity with some head walls and tail walls on that culvert. Now we also have the articulated fords in the middle here. That's an area where we had a culvert on the top photo, but we were able to remove that culvert and replace it with an articulated ford for one of our maintenance projects. And then another typical project are these shoreline facilities. We've been having to do a lot more of these maintenance projects to protect our piers and shoreline facilities. And then the East Bay Mountain Lion project is, as you've heard at the seminar in the past, we've been working on that for a number of years, and Steve's shared a lot of his data on camera trapping. And Steve's actively working with Panthera now to put out a camera grid in the Sonoma area in this photo. So it's our study area for this project, and we're pursuing a scientific research partner with California Fish and Wildlife to expand the project and do more than just photo monitoring. Our goal is to really be able to collar some cats and look at mountain lion usage in all of these regions, but primarily starting our work down in the Sonoma area. So we have an extensive camera grid that's being deployed right now, and we look to get more information on mountain lion usage and wildlife and pig interactions in that area over the next few years. And then also, since we're putting out that camera grid, the way it's being deployed, we will also be able to look at some of the fire recovery effects with this study also. And then integrated pest management, it's been an interesting year for them too. They've really had to shift their work. So I can't thank Pam, Kimberly, and Heather enough for their work on this. They've just done a great job of automating now and creating an online training platform, because typically in a typical year, they would train our staff and they have to train anyone that uses chemicals on the park district. And they also do a lot of training on best management practices. And so since we can't gather in groups of 30, how we used to do trainings in a number of locations in the district and with various groups, since we can't gather in that way, they've moved all those trainings to an online format. It's been a lot of work over the last few months, but we're going to see a lot of, I think, benefits from that, because it'll give staff a lot more flexibility to do the trainings. But associated with that, they've had to do a lot more site visits and one-on-one meetings with people to talk about things. So it's just a lot more work's going into doing their work, but they've just done a great job of adapting and shifting priorities. So thanks, IPM. And then our water management group, they've been really focused on, in a lot of ways, more on harmful algal blooms and also on drinking water management. We haven't had as much recreational water monitoring. Most of our recreational waters were closed this year. We're not able to open our swim beaches due to COVID-19. So water quality groups really focused their efforts more on harmful algal blooms and also on drinking water management. And we're doing a great job there. And we've also been working on a testing lead and drinking water effort to look at potential for lead due to the fixtures and faucets in our system. And so this is in alignment with other programs being done around the state. And we're just about done with that testing. Once we're finished, we'll have tested every drinking fountain and faucet within the park district. And so far, the results are looking better than expected. And once we identify an issue, we've been replacing it closing that system and replacing it in short order. But one of the challenges we've had this year is many of the sites were already closed due to COVID. So we've had to reopen them to do the testing. And it's created some logistical challenges, but we'll be wrapping that study up next year, and we'll be presenting it to the board once we have the full results. Okay, so that's the end of my updates. And thanks for your participation today. And I assume there's some questions coming in. I haven't seen them yet, but before I close this slide and start answering questions, just want to remind everyone to look for the questionnaire. It'll go out later this afternoon. And we just want to hear your feedback and responses to the seminar today. We look forward to doing this again and doing more of these in a virtual environment until we can safely get together in person. So thank you all so much for your participation and interest today. It was just had a great attendance in both days, and just really look forward to talking more and continuing the conversation about how we steward and protect our lands. So thanks. Okay. No, Scott. Thanks for the question. Is the project with Panthera part of the same project as partnering with USDA Wildlife Services? We've heard about that project, but we don't have a lot of details to that. And so I'd certainly like to know more about that and know about what USD Wildlife Services is proposing. I know we've had a few interactions or kind of we're aware of it happening, but there hasn't been a lot of direct communication with the Park District or coordination with our ongoing study. And I think there is some opportunity there. Okay, well, so we still have quite a few attendees, but if there's any other questions about stewardship or things we're working on, I'd be happy to take them. Okay, well, I think as we can time to close down the seminar. I mean, I'll stick around for a few minutes in case additional questions come in, but that's really the end of the program for today. So thank you to everyone who was able to attend and participate. We really appreciate all of your participation, and it's great to see so many familiar names. I wish I could say familiar faces. I just, it would be nice to see you all. And so thanks for the comments, Jim and Pam, and really miss seeing you. And thanks for all the well wishes. So thanks everyone for coming, and we look forward to talking more